And as
We're
we go
having a
to,
good time, having a good time. Ba, 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 da, 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 da.
and again, we keep moving from strength to strength. Now, Dave. First of all, welcome to the Gooners Podcast. I'm breaking a lot of ducks today. Finally, Dave Seager, loving the fact that you are able to join us today. We've had some administrative backstage switches to co-hosting and stuff. Most of which were my fault. And I'll peel the curtain back a little bit. I sent out the bat signal and stole Sophie from Tiffany this morning because I knew that there are a couple of people you can count on, and Sophie being the primary one to just help you out when you're down, you're down and troubled and you need a helping hand, and nothing is going right. Sophie will come in. And I also know that you have recently had a wonderful chat, and that if I happen to kind of glaze over a little bit in my third hour, that the podcast will not suffer. But Dave, welcome to the Gooners Podcast. Welcome to the Pod-A-Thon.
Thank you for the invite. Been looking forward to it.
Yes, my pleasure. And what are you wearing? Who are you wearing today? What do we have? Which year do we
I
have?
don't buy shirts very often. This is the one I bought after I lost my son. So it don't you can see the back, but you see that?
Love that.
He wore number 11 and his friends called him Seags. So I won't buy another shirt after this one. Well, I've got a retro shirt, but this will fall off me, I would imagine.
Yeah, there's no reason to buy anything after that. So as most people will know, you are you the founder of Gunnerstown? Would you say?
Co-founder with Paul Hepker.
Okay, and
Invinciblog, as he is known on Twitter.
Okay, that's a name I recall, and just again one of the early and quality Arsenal blogs. Amazing writing on that. We were all set to have Mike McDonald on a few hours back.
Yeah, I saw that.
Who and there was a family situation that it had to be attended to, so Mike wasn't able to make it. But I finally had the opportunity to meet Mike in person after corresponding with him for a number of years. We met in Orlando in the loudest, least like finally meeting someone that you've wanted to hang out with for a long time environment. He's got his kids. It was the loudest bar scene in Orlando. The Women's World Cup game or the Women's Euro game. I think the one with Spain was going on at the time, and it was just so we have like a selfie together, and now we have to figure out a time to do it again because he's a lovely.
He's a great writer, but he's becoming a great writer. He's football brain. He's very astute. Tactically, there are a few better writers, to be honest.
Yeah, and just a really creative guy, and I love the name of his column, Positives, Needs, and Hopes. We have all three of those, I think, to be looking at right now.
Well, he has a format that works, and people have started to hook into. So that was the style, and the name came after the style, really. But yeah, very good, very good.
Well, it's great, and there's no shortage of Arsenal content out there in the written form. There is a shortage of quality.
To find the right stuff. Yeah, I mean, when I started writing back in 2011, I think, I was one of the new kids on the block, but there was a block where about five blogs, There weren't many when I launched 1-0 down, 2-1 up, which I no longer have. But yeah, I mean, there was obviously Gunner blog and Arse blog and Goonerholic, but
Goonerholic, yeah, I was about to mention Dave.
Yeah, it was now, of course, it's a ridiculously crowded space. But then that's what happens when you support the best team, isn't it, I guess?
That is true. And yeah, Dave would have been, I would have asked him on for 4 hours of this thing just to continue to peel his brain back. I mean, Dave Faber was
very disappointed, to be fair.
Well, he was my first kind of, we've talked on this Pod-A-Thon a number of different times about the generational passing down of Arsenal wisdom, of what it means to be Arsenal, what this team is about. And especially for an American, I would like to think I have a better than average understanding of the club just over, 3, almost 4 decades since I started following the club. And that's not to place me in any capacity of better or worse than any fan who just discovered the club 3 years ago. But we need those bridges to the past, and unfortunately, we've lost a number of them just in recent years, in Dave and Maria and others, and you know, that is why it's very important. And Dave was kind of my, you know, I would just sit at his knee, figuratively speaking, and just learn a lot about you know, what it was like to be following the club during the lean years, you know, what it's like to come in from Swindon every weekend and see Utter Dross, you know, and
knowing you had to have beer with me before the game. It was awful. It was awful.
Yeah, well, that he never mentioned that. No, but yeah, I mean, it's and that's why I love having folks like you and Amy Lawrence and Sophie and others on who are, you know, bridging together these generations of Arsenal fans. And a generation of Arsenal fans can be a 5-year gap. It doesn't have to, it's not like a 25-year thing. It's
you know something, what I discovered, you know, a few times with interviews and certainly doing the Geordie Armstrong book, it's not just fans, it's players. You know, there are certain people within the infrastructure of Arsenal, you know, in the past and now. There's always certain individuals that are going to pass on what it means to be an Arsenal player to the players, in the same way as you say there are fans who've been going for years that you would listen to. Honestly, it's the same within the club. You know, Geordie Armstrong was that go-to player, you know, for you know, as a coach, and people would talk about it. But you know, even Dennis Bergkamp would say, you know, Geordie Armstrong, you know, I was Arsenal-fied by Geordie Armstrong, and there are still people like that now. So it's great when you have
who is it now?
Past players coming back into, you know, into roles within the club, whether it's administration roles, just being around the training ground like it was with Bobby Perez, you know, or people who are actually on the coaching staff coming back in. It's great. You know.
I mean, who on the active playing roster though is that? I mean, is it Granit Xhaka at this point? Like who is the?
Well, that's
not necessary.
It is more within the, you know, within the management and the coaching staff, I'd say now. But I mean, unfortunately, Hector would have been that player. I would have thought, you know, until last year, Hector would have been the go-to, you know, the senior player who got what it meant to play for Arsenal. Unfortunately, we're just about to see a partner of the wage there. But I think one of the nice things with Hector is, you know, fans on social media get het up about the fact we're not going to get a big transfer fee. Crikey, man, he's given us 11 years, great service. He's won 3 FA Cups. Who cares? You know, really, it's not your money. You know, I like the fact that he's going to be able to come back to Arsenal and people are going to welcome him. It happens so little in modern football. You know,
put the words out my mouth. Yeah,
it's great.
I mean, Nacho Monreal comes back, he'll get a warm.
Oh my god!
You know,
that's brilliant example.
I'm putting him in the same category. If you leave that way, come back anytime.
And you take Laurent Koscielny, unfortunately, maybe not.
Yeah, no.
That's the difference.
But Mikel, I think, Dave, we've talked about him a bit, but just here, when Mike asked him about Maria on the red carpet, he was prepared for that question. He gets it. I mean, he's captained the team, of course, but when you talk about ex-players, our manager is someone who's worn the shirt, lifted the cup, and has that history as well. I think it's a massive. I'm seeing.
Oh, it's huge. It's huge.
It's massive, isn't it?
Yeah, and I also think, I mean, the fact that people forget that he took a pay cut to come. I mean, he wanted to play for Arsenal. He didn't have to leave Everton. You know, he wanted to leave Everton, not because it was leaving Everton, because he was joining Arsenal. So that he already admired the club from afar and knew what it stood for.
On the heels of an 8-2 loss, mind you.
Yeah.
He still decided.
There's a few players arrived on the back of that.
Yeah.
But yeah. But no, yeah, definitely.
And
have you read this, Mike?
I am ashamed that I have not. It's mostly because I can't read.
See you later.
I'm not gonna. You know, look, I would love to have read every book of and everything that and I tried for a while and I just can't. I will. I absolutely will.
It's easy now. It's on Kindle in America. Amazon.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I have no. I'm going to do that as soon as this podcast is over. I'm going to.
I think you might sleep first. To be fair, I think you might sleep first
in about another 6 hours. But yeah, I mean, the book. Tell us a little bit. I mean, the author's note I have copied down here because I just wanted to read it. And you know, I hope it's okay to kind of talk about the impetus behind this because I know it is painful. And I know it is, you know, saturating in your life and as it can only possibly be. But suffering such personal trauma dramatically alters your perspective on life and places many things very firmly in context. Football, described by one of the comedians in the previous book as the most important of the unimportant things in life, is just that. I will always love the game and my Arsenal, but the club's fortunes are now positioned in a new context. I still watch every match and relish each win, but the defeats and the poor performances are no more than that. There's always the next match. So to write an Arsenal-related book framed by new perspective had to be a meaningful project. It seemed appropriate to explore the football passions and the dramatic stories of individuals whose own support of the Gunners and indeed whose lives were also framed differently.
I would buy that.
Yeah, you should buy that. I just ordered 9 copies, and I'm going to read them all simultaneously. No, but seriously, I am always harping on, am I not, Sophie, about how like when things are good on the pitch, celebrate your ass off. When things are not, my approach, and I'm not telling anyone else how to consume the club, my approach is to fall back on the things that ground me. The things like this, what we're doing right now, the things like Tiffany and pushing us over the edge, and all the 54 people that have donated in the last 24 hours, and the amazing time we just had in Orlando, and just it is a little bit duplicitous. It could be a little sticking my head in the sand and a flight to safety, but I've had some things happen in my life that really have given me perspective, and I know, Dave, unfortunately you have as well.
I would never preach to anyone, and that's probably why I'm less active social media than I used to be, because I know that sometimes I see things that just I want to reply to and say, look, get a grip, but I don't, because it's not fair. Because I was like those guys, so it's not fair. I'm not saying anyone should have the same perspective as me. I'm just saying that's my perspective. It's not, and I fully understand how all-encompassing it can be.
Yeah, I hold my hands up, and there were definitely times last season where I kind of went supersonic on a few things, and definitely the first 3 games of the season, and meltdown after losing to that stretch of games, Brighton, Southampton. I did. But I learned a lot last season too after some of those events, because fans like Maria and Dave and I spent a bit of time talking on the podcast last season about the book, and we've had people whose stories are beautifully told in the book on the show too. I think, and I can say this, and you guys will get it, it's made me think differently a little bit, and maybe made me a better fan. And learn.
Better's an interesting word, but because you've been pretty consistent about. I mean, I just think it's interesting that you're using the word better, because you must feel introspectively that it's better to feel the way that you're feeling now than maybe you did last year, or am I parsing?
Yeah, and I think also maybe some things that have been going on personally over the last few months too. I understand more so where Dave's perspective comes from, where yours, and then just learning from Maria, who was just a unconditional love for the club, period. And it's I think the approach going into this season is a little bit different for me because of those conversations, and talking to Dave in particular about this book and the soul of where it came from.
But there are other factors as well, because I think, all 8 people who read the book felt exactly the same, to be fair. But I think also when you have 2 or 3 homegrown players in the side, there are other things that impact how you feel about the club. You're going to be more patient and tolerant with a Smith Rowe or a Saka than you would with an expensive signing. So there are other things that are changing the atmosphere around the club. The fact that we've spoken about, the fact that the manager and Edu, are ex-Gooners that get it. There are lots of factors coming into play to give us this feel-good factor, I think, at the moment. But I have to say, despite my big change, that phrase that you read out from my introduction and my foreword, I have always had the attitude that the great thing about football is there's always another game. That was pre any disaster or trauma in my life. And that didn't change the fact I would be, heinously angry at times in the stadium, walking home. But when you get home, there's always the next match to look forward to, because I love going to football matches and I love being with people at football matches. Obviously, you'd rather be higher up the league table. Obviously, you'd rather be, celebrating trophies, of course. But you still have that match day experience and that being with friends and chatting about things that you love chatting about. So you always have to there's lots of things in the melting pot about being a football supporter, and it doesn't have to be watching a game live. It could be like Marlon in the book, disabled, goes to the pub with all the Bay Area Gooners to watch football together. It's a joint, it's a community experience wherever you are in the world, and that's what football's about as much as the trophies and and the silverware and the titles.
Perspective is an interesting thing. I'm fascinated by perspective, and again, I don't want to preach or impose my will or views or life experiences on other people, but I do wonder, I'll never forget December 4th, 2009. I came home. My son was 6 at the time. He went down to our basement. We have an underground basement, finished basement with carpet and bathroom and rooms and all that. As you do over here, and he came back upstairs and said, "Daddy, there's poop on the floor." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, we don't have a dog, we don't have a pet. My kids are potty trained." He didn't say I pooped on the floor, so I go down there, and we had a sewage backflow from the pipes that basically sewage had been coming up slowly, and finally just came up through the loo and the bathtub, and there was just toilet paper and waste all over our newly finished basement.
Nice.
And I just stood there and laughed because I had just gotten home from the hospital finding out that my dad's chemo had not worked and he had 3 months to live. And it was one of these things that in any other situation, I would have lost my shit, literally and figuratively. And it's just like, I was like, you know what? This too shall pass. I'll call the company. They'll come. Let's not walk around in it, and stuff. But I'll deal with this because I got bigger fish to fry. And taking that now and relating it to a loss against Everton when Eddie Nketiah misses a wide open, header 2 feet from the goal. I mean, like how do you even relate those two things? But it isn't just an age thing. It's not just a once you've lived through thing. I see people who have had struggle and death or disappointment or strife in their life who still go mental over football because it's just ingrained in them. So how do you reconcile your feeling of, I have, I had a daughter who was almost stillborn. I had, there's all these things that really, really, really scared me. And I'm getting this upset about football. I need to check myself. Not everybody can do that, right? I mean,
no, it seems not. But I think it's the difference between sitting here in the cold light day talking about things and being in the stadium as well, of course. I mean, I will scream as much as the next person in the stadium. It's just that, I flatline.
How long you hold on to it?
I probably flatline quicker than other people after the event. But yeah.
It's okay. I think it's okay for fans to have that passion and it's in our DNA to say something after the game or be critical. And especially when you have a show that you host and stuff like that, you always want to be authentic and true to yourself. I just think that, sometimes these experiences help you maybe be a bit more.
To be honest with you, I miss my son WhatsApping me, Shaka's effing useless during a game or Mertesaker's got the turning, arc of an oil tank or whatever. I miss that. Of course I do.
But when Arsenal's the tie that binds you together, that's
I used to sit watching games with him and I get angry and he would be on another level and would get up and storm out of the room or he never stormed out the stadium, but he would storm out of the room and I'd be crying out loud to him and he would lose his rag with me for being calm. And I never thought I was calm, but it's all relative.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
But when someone's going absolutely mental though, I shouldn't be saying that. When someone is becoming very, very emotional about, in the immediate, whether it's a rant on a podcast or a YouTube channel or just alone in their house throwing things at the television, is there a realization? I know I'm kind of hyper obsessing over this because I'm just fascinated by human behavior. Is there an obsession? Is there a point at which they're like, I know I'm being irrational, but this is how I feel in this moment? Or do they truly believe that it is worth that kind of level of response? And
I tell you, the point is when you see people or you hear people who you know and respect start singing songs that they shouldn't be singing because they get caught up in heat in the moment, or shouting things that they definitely shouldn't be shouting. And unfortunately, I'm a bit of an idiot, and I would pull people up. If I'm in the ground and somebody says something racist, something homophobic, something very, very personal about a player, I won't call a steward, but if they can hear me, I'll tell them. And I've been, hit or threatened several times because of that sort of behaviour, because I can't stand it. But it does happen. That is the game we all love. I would just hope that people will exercise more restraint. And I think, obviously, we're all more educated, in 2022 than we were in 1982 when I started going. Because I tell you now, some of the stuff that I sang as a teenager, or I said, or I thought,
right.
And I was an educated teenager, and I'm ashamed, in hindsight. So
it's a mob mentality in sport and a lot of things. And
I'm curious because I know he won't mind me saying, Dave's very proud granddad now. So are you going to introduce the Arsenal to the little grandbaby?
No, I can't. No, I can't. Well, I could, but I'll wait and see, because Kyle, my son-in-law, is a Chelsea fan.
Yeah, so, but you only have to wait that out for 3 or 4 more years, though, and then it'll change.
Yeah, well, although actually he's sort of Chelsea fan and had a second team, which I'm not a fan of. But second team was Brentford, so he now has 2 Premier League sides. So the chance of introducing a third into the family are unlikely.
Chelsea and Brentford?
My daughter has been to Arsenal with me. She went to her first game in 0-0 against Blackburn in the George Graham era. So that's when we're talking. So she's 33 now. So she's been to the Arsenal. So she's an Arsenal fan, but she's not, as passionate as him about Chelsea. So unlikely.
So Chelsea and second team Brentford.
That's unusual.
He had a second team that he never thought would be in the Premier League.
I see.
His best mate is Joe Dyke, son of Greg Dyke, who was obviously chairman at Brentford. So they used to go, when Chelsea went home or he couldn't get a ticket, he would go to Brentford just to watch football. And now, never thought it would happen, but now he's got 2 Premier League sides.
It's crazy. My second club is Sutton United, and I'm fearful because now they're a football league team. They're 3 more seasons and they.
Well, Northampton Town are mine, so I think I'm probably safe.
Barnet are mine. So I think
you got a great
that's
Barnet.
pretty safe. But how does he do when Chelsea and Brentford played last season?
I've never really asked him, actually. I think he's got a bit disillusioned with Chelsea. I mean, he's both his brothers are Chelsea fans. Weirdly, my the other grandfather, Kyle's dad, he's a Tottenham fan. So he's a Tottenham fan and produced 3 Chelsea sporting sons. So go figure.
I get that. My dad's a Man United fan. And my
brother,
and
the rest of your family's Spurs fans, right?
Well, my sister's a Man United fan. My brother's a Tottenham fan, and I'm an Arsenal fan. And our family, our cousins and uncles, we're mixed between Arsenal and
well,
Tottenham.
I went to my first game.
You came from a mixed family.
I was an Arsenal fan from the early 70s, and I went to my first game in 76, and it's never been any different for me. So.
Wow, that's crazy. How things have evolved and changed. How, Dave, you've really seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. Which is maybe why you can be more measured.
But also, I think like the Terry Neal thing, and a lot of Gooners will be seeing all that on social media, going, who. I actually think sometimes the fans from afar, like yourself, Mike, and yourself, Sophie, have more appreciation sometimes of the history because they just want to learn. You want to learn everything about the club you've chosen, whereas perhaps younger English fans don't. So, Terry Neal was the manager that the team I first went to see. He was the manager that signed Supermac. He was a manager who allowed Liam Brady to play every week. So, he was a hero to me.
Well, and
he never quite had the success.
As an example of that, Terry Neal, maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, something like that, came to the DC Armory, which is the Washington DC Supporters Club. We have a couple. One's kind of just outside Washington, one's in Washington, and where they used to get together, I decided a long time ago I was not comfortable going anymore. Long story, but so I couldn't go to that. But Terry Neal met a lot of the DC Gooners, and in the Facebook groups and the community that we're in, a lot of Americans who might not even have ever gone over to England for a game mourning Terry Neal's passing and posting pictures of themselves with the guy. And again, it's these strings that draw the generations together, that these people were so impacted by a visit to some guy who to them was just this old Arsenal guy, like didn't live through him, didn't really have an impact from him, but I'm sure he came there that day and waxed poetic and told some stories. And
well, he was also, after he stopped managing, he was a co-commentator for a lot, on London, on Capital Gold Radio. It was obviously the London team's Saturday afternoon commentary before everything was on telly. He was a very popular he was a very popular pundit on radio in the late 80s, early 90s as well. So
and also another who crossed over, right? Tottenham.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
And
he wasn't great. He didn't win anything at Tottenham, obviously.
No.
And then he came and won trophies at Arsenal, and nearly could have won. I mean, there were a couple of factors that people you don't know that who weren't around. For example, in '78 when we lost to Ipswich, I mean, what wasn't revealed until long after, when Liam Brady wrote his biography, was that he wasn't fit. He wasn't fit in '78, and everything in the team revolved around Brady at that point, and he wasn't fit. And yet, Terry Neal and Don Howe asked him to play. And looking back, it was obvious to me now when I watched the replays that he wasn't fit, and we lost. In '79, he was fit, just won Player of the Year, majestic, and we won. And then in '80 again, he was carrying a knock, and this time he said, I got the wrong man. In '78, he asked to play. He didn't tell the management that he was carrying a knock. And in '80, it was his last game, a penultimate game. So he wanted to play, but again, wasn't fully fit. So if he'd been fully fit for Valencia and West Ham and Ipswich, that could have been 4 trophies, and Terry Neal might still, might have been manager for years and years. It's fine margins.
Yeah. 80, that was the last time West Ham won a trophy, right, Dave?
I think they might have won. Have they? Yeah, you could be right. Yeah. Do you not count the championship winning as a trophy then?
Okay, fair dues.
Sorry, no hammers listening. But you got to remember that's 1980. That the players say, he can't play 2 times a week. I mean, Brian Talbot played something like 66 games that season.
I used to love Brian
because we went all the way to the FA Cup final. We went to the semi-final of the League Cup. We went to the final of the Cup Winners' Cup, and we were pushing towards the top of the league, which was 42 games in those days. So they were playing. A lot of those players played 60 plus games that season.
This is why I love talking to Dave, because last time I heard Brian Talbot's name, I mean, such great players. I know everyone kind of focuses on, and of course, Generation X, we think a little differently. You got the baby boomers, of course, that can go further back. And now the new generation who, as long as they fall in love with Arsenal, that's great. And some people, it's so easy to say, the Invincible is my favorite. But what is your favorite era as an Arsenal fan? Like what?
I mean, I'm not one of these fans who say, George Graham was great. I've had some real highs as an Arsenal fan, but the early Wenger 6 years, you can't argue against that being the greatest era. I'm sorry. We had great moments. 89 was incredible. 91 to go for the season, only losing 1 game, which is only because Tony Adams was banged up. There are incredible stories, but for the pure football we played from 97 through to 2004, majestic. To see that sort of stuff week in, week out is just something that's what you need to remember, is you've got to count your blessings, because some football fans will never see that in their lifetime. And I know fans that I've interviewed who are in their 60s and 70s, who basically would liken that to the 60s sort of Real Madrid side. That sort of football. We've been very fortunate in the Premier League in that we've seen Man City in recent years. We saw Man United in their pomp. But that period, we can argue about who was the greatest team, because obviously the Invincibles, stats will tell you they're not the greatest team, not the most points, not the most goals, but for pure exciting football and slick football, I would still put that team ahead of the Man City team of today. The Man City team will win more trophies, I'm sure.
Yeah, but even Fergie puts that team ahead of his treble-winning team as well, who I think that United treble-winning team, I don't know.
They got very lucky. I mean, 1 kick away from, if we'd have won that semi-final, we probably would have won the FA Cup and the league, and it would have been us.
I bet my house Dennis was going to bury that penalty.
Yeah, fine margins. Fine, Mike. Have you had Lee Dixon on yet? He still probably has nightmares about Ryan Giggs.
He was the first guest on. He was
I
on
thought Perry was on before me.
Smudger was on. Smudger was on before you.
Oh, when's Perry on?
Perry is on next. Actually, I saw your tweet about Perry, which he won't see because he's smart enough to avoid.
I said, I think you're on before me, so don't be as entertaining as you normally are. But now I realise he's on after me, so I'm stuffed either way.
Yeah. Oh, and
he's sandwiched in between Smudger and Groves. I love it.
It's
like great sandwich
position to be in. Yeah,
who knows, this new team, you know, let's see. It's exciting times.
What do you think, Dave? What's your
Well, I really accept before you go absolutely crazy.
We're nailed on for top 3. You know, I would say. You know, what probably one or two slight tweaks away, but I think that'll happen before the end of the transfer window. I'm really excited. And I'm not just excited because I think we're going to win things or we're going to challenge. I'm excited because it took Arteta a while to get us playing the brand of football he wants. And obviously that people who don't like him will say, yeah, but he's already spent a fortune. You know, I don't care. It's not my money. But, you know, he's got a blend and he was a couple of additions away from the way he wanted to play. For example, if you look at the 4-3-3 or 4-1-2-3, whatever you want to call it, with 2 8s, now we can debate the Xhaka situation. But, you know, that's fine with me. What wasn't fine, bless him, was Eddie Nketiah being the main striker, or previously Aubameyang and Lacazette. Because if you're going to play that way, and the way Arteta wants to play, all 4 front players have to be pressing in unison and consistently. And Saka can do it, Martinelli can do it, Odegaard can do it, but Lacazette couldn't, and Aubameyang couldn't.
Right.
And Nketiah probably could, but you know, he's a great player to have at the club, and you know, he's an Arsenal boy now. But Jesus is completely different gravy. You know, he literally, like Martinelli, he will just run and harry and hassle. And the other thing I think is a big factor this year, which most people aren't talking about, but I keep talking about, is the 5 substitutions. I think the team that gets to grips with that quickest will get a great start. And we're lucky in that we've not got any big sides in the first few games, in theory. Mm-hmm. And I think he was a great exponent of the 5 subs in COVID, and I think he will be again. And I think when you see the players, like, for example, Vieira, for me, I've bought Vieira this season to play the last 20 minutes after Odegaard's run himself into the ground. Because last year, you know, you've got the last 10 or 15 minutes, and Odegaard he's just done so much for the team, and he can't do it anymore. And people will criticise him as his form tailed off a little bit for a while. You can't do that the way you can play for 90 minutes, but not the way that he plays. Not week in, week out, not twice a week. So we bought someone who can finish the game. And it'll be like rugby. You'll have a starting team and you'll have a finishing team. And I genuinely believe that. And I think we are squad building for that situation. And to be able to change the tactics completely in game as well. And I'm not sure I'm seeing that from the other top sides.
Yeah. You mentioned that last time we spoke too, the 5 subs. I was afraid that it would dilute the product. You know, but I'm kind of coming around.
I think it gives us a good chance.
Is it a permanent thing, or is it this year in light of the Winter World Cup?
It's permanent now, and to be fair, I think it's a bit unfair against the teams with smaller squads. Obviously, it favours the bigger clubs. So, but you know that if you give that criticism, then the answer will be, well, it gives your younger players a chance to come through and prove themselves. You know, so as we've seen it recently at Arsenal. So
it gives some of the clubs that aren't in Europe a chance to do what normally you would do in Europa League group stages or something like that.
And that's another factor that everyone's forgotten with Arsenal. Because we've been knocked out of the Milk Cup, Carling Cup, Caribou Cup, whatever it's called. Because we've been knocked out early for the last few years, we just haven't had those 4 or 5 games where you would see, you know, the young players playing and getting a taste of first team football. We haven't had that. So we only had the Europa League, and then we had nothing. So, you know, that's why Charlie Bettino got a couple of minutes last year in 1 game. You know, if things had been according to plan, he probably would have had 3 or 4 games in the League Cup.
Dave, are you surprised he didn't come on the US tour? Are you surprised?
I was actually very surprised. I texted his dad. I haven't heard back. I was wondering whether the family was surprised. I don't know. I was very surprised. I just think, I can only guess it's a case of let's put the players who want to sell in the shop window. I can't think of another good reason to take some of those players. I thought it was really surprising.
I wasn't so much against the strategy when it comes to the field players, but five goalkeepers, where you never intended on playing 3 of them.
It didn't make sense.
It
You know, I mean, obviously they did play football, you know, while the team was in America. And, you know, they have had friendlies as well. And he has had minutes. But, yeah, I mean, I'm sure he would have loved to have been in America.
Do you think something changed for Mikel after that Forest game? I would hope not.
Well, he had a lot of injuries to deal with that day. And he also, that was like the transition to the 2-8s away from the 4-2-3-1. So he was asking an awful lot of Charlie that game, I thought, with Lukonga. And it was, you know, Forest were towards the top of the championship. You know, it's the biggest game of their season. It was a really tough game to have to be a linchpin of the side. And people watching him for the first time for a full 90 minutes might have thought he went missing. I was in the stadium. He didn't.
Was that the game that he subbed Nuno out in the first half?
Yeah. That was when they played all white at the City Ground. I mean, and I was actually at the game, and there were times where you saw why everyone in the club's so excited about him. But equally, there were times the game just passed him by, and I just don't think any player with that little experience would have made any more of an impact than Charlie did that day. He didn't do anything particularly wrong. It was just a baptism of fire.
Yeah, we didn't lose because of Charlie. God. That's for sure. But I just remember like the article that you wrote. Was it a couple of years ago now? The one for Gooners Town.
What, the interview with Willow about Charlie?
Yeah. And it just seemed last season there was this swell of excitement around him, and since the summer tours have been announced, and you know, since that Forest game, I don't know, it just feels like everything's kind of.
He did have quite a long period out with the injury.
Yeah.
But you know, I know the club have got a plan for him, and unless it's changed, that plan is not for him to go on loan. So there are certain players that they decide, like Bukayo.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to send you on loan. We want you to evolve with the first team squad. And Charlie is, unless anything's changed, is definitely in that exclusive club.
Very cool indeed.
Quick update on Gooners versus Cancer. While we have a bit of a lull, we are for this effort starting yesterday morning. We are now at $5,028. We're in a kind of a pause here, which I know is partly because everyone has donated already, and thank you for doing that. If you think just because we have had 21 prize draws and there's only 5 left that there's no reason to donate anymore, let me just tell you, any donations made at any time throughout the summer, whether it was for the Orlando raffle, for the Baltimore raffle, for anything, you are also entered in a raffle later this summer where we're going to have about 10 to 12 different prizes that you can choose from, like game tickets, fan experiences. I'm pretty sure Perry Groves will give away his customary one, which is a tour for 2 behind the scenes at the Emirates in the Legends Tour, and then beers afterwards, which is an insane experience if you've never done it before.
I don't have any hard copies of my own book. Otherwise, I would donate one. I probably can get one, but I don't know how quickly you need it. Well, you've got one, I know, but that was for your pod. But I will donate, obviously, but I haven't.
We're launching a big comp this week for this, Mike, and maybe we can tie in together and do something. But it's very special for special reasons, and all be revealed a bit later on this week. We're very excited about it.
Well, don't overcommit to something that's but so anyway, not only are you entered in that, but there's also 5 drawings left, and the 5 drawings are for a large piece of Ruth Beck's art, Perry Groves signed shirt, a non-personalized or just a brand new Arsenal shirt, a brand new Arsenal personalized kit, and then the grand prize drawing, which is a new home shirt signed by Bukayo Saka, Emile Smith-Rowe, and Tomiyasu. So there's still great stuff to win. We have reached our $5,000 goal, which places us ahead of where we were last year. But I'd love to kind of put some distance between us and that. So please visit goonersversuscancer.com, goonersvcancer.com. So Lori's just
how many hours to go? How many hours to go now, Mike?
Well, we end at 6 p.m. my time, so we've got 4 hours and 18 minutes left. And I think I have my second win now. I honestly I have to apologize to Clive because it was nothing about anything he was saying, but that was the hour where I started to struggle. It just hit me all of a sudden, and I was kind of like, yeah,
he didn't need any questions. He could just talk for an hour anyway.
Well, and he did, and he did it beautifully. And him and Lee judges were kind of going back and forth in a way that really kind of saved me a little bit. But yeah, it's we're at the end of the road almost. But how is in your world, where on your radar is the women's game as far as the Euros having just completed?
What was it?
Festive time. Were you watching all the games? Is it?
I did watch most of them. I was away on holiday, but I watched most of them live. Yeah, I did. I really enjoyed it. And you can't help but feel particularly proud with the contribution of the two Arsenal players as well. So, whoever I was watching it, I was, oh yeah, that's the Arsenal captain. That's the look at everything starts with Leah. Look, every ball comes out from Leah. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. In fact, to be honest with you, it's crazy because I was at a friend's on Sunday, 3 guys, 3 wives, watching, having a barbecue, and then we stopped the barbecue. We just came in, decking open, telly, big screen, sit there, drinking and watching the match. And I'm sure there were thousands, if not millions, of people doing exactly the same.
Yeah.
In fact, I was just looking. I'm probably going to buy tickets because I haven't been to Arsenal games. I haven't. So I was thinking I might buy some tickets for the North London derby.
Yeah. Everyone is saying that. Like, literally, is there a possibility that this sells out the Emirates?
Tim wrote.
So it's crazy.
Tim wrote something about it yesterday, which I haven't caught up on. But there was the number of tickets that was sold after the final for that game was. But
the elevation in the level in the last 2 or 3 years is astonishing.
Yeah,
and you have to put it down to the fact they're professional and they're full time. But it's just the skill was always there, but the pace of the game and the passing accuracy and the imagination. It's just like watching men's game. The way the moves evolved and everything. And it used to be the case. I used to think, well, of course, there's going to be more goals because the keepers are smaller and the goals the same size. All these old cliches, but it really isn't like that. And and it was the only difference is you could see the difference between, say, like taking England and Northern Ireland, where the game isn't professional. It was a big difference. So it's still got a way to go in how many countries will have professional leagues. And exactly. The onus is on the clubs in those countries to back those teams more.
Also, the Arsenal have been a bit trailblazing as well since last season. But this coming season, there's going to be six matches at the Emirates
League, isn't it?
Yeah, and some WSL games too. So it's gonna be great. And the other federations will slowly catch up. Obviously, the US women's national team kind of kickstarted all of it, but you just see the quality of this Euros compared to even the last World Cup as well. You're still going to get some of those thumping results when the World Cup comes around next summer, but it's definitely
a great back-to-back opportunity. I mean, that's
Well, they've just announced a match, haven't they, between England and USA at the end of September?
USA, which is
a friendly.
Yeah.
Oh, that'll be good. Where is
that'll give England a real indicator.
I hope the World Cup's going to be in Australia and New Zealand.
Oh wow! Okay.
So time-wise for us, it's a bit sucky, Mike, but sucky for you too, maybe Dave. But it's going to be. I would love to see an England-US final. It would just be too good. But yeah, it's been the Euros were amazing, absolutely amazing, and the fact that everyone got into it, audiences were massive, crowds were massive, and no trouble at Wembley. No fighting, none of that. And I think the purity of the game too, the way it's played, less diving, less antics. I think that's something people embrace and kind of like and find refreshing as well. So
yeah, that's a great word, purity. And Dave, this is Andy. Andy is the co-founder of, up until he just adjusted his screen, a disembodied head. But now he has a body attached to him. So. Yeah,
because we've got another World Cup before that one, and I think there's going to be a lot of Arsenal players at that World Cup as well.
Yeah.
Oh, too many for my liking, actually.
Well,
it's good for them.
The World Cup in November is gonna present quite a pickle, isn't it, in terms of what could potentially happen this season? It's going to be quite fascinating, you guys. I think really important.
Amassing a lot of points before the World Cup is going to put you in a very
that, and what's it going to do to the January transfer window? I mean, imagine if the World Cup was after the transfer window. I guess kind of like the AFCON tends to be. It's not after, but it's like coinciding with it because, with when you've got the players going deep in the tournament or God forbid getting an injury that, to not be able to replace or reinforce or something like that. But do you think this will be one of the more active January transfer windows in recent history because of the World Cup?
Opposite.
You think the opposite?
I haven't really thought about it, to be honest.
Have they kind of announced if there'll be like a break in the Premier League because remember 2 seasons ago, like teams took like a week off, half the season play or half the league played while one half took a week off, and then they vice versa did. Like
I think they're stopping from like November 10th.
November, it's stopping.
No. I know it's stopping.
You're talking about Christmas, Andy. You're talking about Christmas when they're
like as the teams return and as players return, are they going to try and give do the same thing where they say, hey, for 10 days, half the league is going to play, the other half will take a break, and then they'll
I think they just resume on Boxing Day with match day, whatever that is, and then they keep going from there. I mean,
that's why if you look at the fixtures now, there's so many Thursday games in the Premier League. That's a new thing for this season. So they're trying to fit in more fixtures, ahead. So there's not this massive rush afterwards. It's evenly divided.
It was February when they did it.
I mean, it's going to be tough for Arsenal to have to justify, the World Cup goes and what are you going to do? Like games kick in and you're going to let Saka go on a 10-day vacation. It's like the summer. It's like at the discretion of the club. But that's where I think the rubber will meet the road with injuries and fatigue. And
that's why the depth is so important.
Yeah.
Well, but let's say you're on a World Cup team that gets to the quarterfinals in the middle of November, early December. Is your workload any different than it would have been just during the Premier League season? Like, do you need 2 weeks off after that to relax and rejuvenate and miss Premier League games for your club?
I think the factor of the heat they're playing in might make it slightly different than just playing games in the normal league. You're
not in your environment, are you, Mike? You're not in your environment. You're training a little bit differently, maybe. You're not with your teammates. I think there's various factors that come into it that may make it feel different. Also, the intensity of playing in the World Cup, like Dave says, the weather.
I just remember people used to be like, oh, well, of course Mesut Ozil's back hurts because he flew back and forth to, when Germany played Armenia or something like that.
In a private jet.
Yeah, it's a big bag.
About his back hurts.
If you look at the fixtures, and obviously this doesn't include cup competition, but January 2nd, we play Newcastle, and then we have Spurs on the 14th. So even if you threw a cup game in there, that's 12 days.
That is what happens. FA Cup.
Yeah. But if you throw a cup game in there and it's a throw, let's say it's a lower league opposition, then that's a good 10-day stretch where players could ideally get a rest. But it's between our January. There's only 3 matches. But there are 3 big ones: Newcastle, Tottenham, and United.
But there could be a League Cup game in there too if we make the semi-finals of the League Cup again.
I think what you'll see is in the past, Arsenal have been, very true to the rules in that if you were away on international duty at a tournament, it was that 2-week thing, whereas other clubs would bring players back a bit earlier, particularly if they hadn't gone all the way in the tournament sort of thing. And I think what you'll see is, take, I don't know, bad example in a way, but Martin Keown went to 2 World Cups and didn't play a game. Why would you give that player 2 weeks off when you've got another player who played all the way through to the semi-finals?
Exactly.
So I think they'll look, if you take, let's just say, for example, Emile Smith-Rowe's not going to be starting every week, but he does stay in the England squad, and doesn't play for England. He's going to be as fresh as anyone. So you're going to have to look at the individual selection. I think Saka will play a lot of football for England, to be honest. But I don't know. Whether Ben White will. I don't think Aaron Ramsdale will be first choice. So, we could just be talking about one player,
Saka,
from the England point of view, and then obviously there'll be other players from Jesus, hopefully Martinelli, possibly. So we'll see.
Yeah. I know Henrik is saying all games there are indoors in air-conditioned, controlled environments. Yeah, of course, but you still. You're still going to feel that heat when you're traveling to and from, and it's not as simple as that. So
that brutal 23-degree heat. that apparently, I mean, it isn't the same as getting on, the coach and going to Bournemouth from London. I agree.
It can be very sunny in Bournemouth, to be fair. It's only about 30 minutes.
That's true.
It's only
And
about
it
30
can be
minutes.
75, just not in November. But I don't know. It seems to me that thank you, Andy, for showing up and then leaving right away. This is what I'm dealing with on a regular basis.
It's back.
Fuck you, man.
So, are you ready to start?
Just being polite.
Yeah, I just came on to say hi.
He didn't want to talk with his mouth full.
Basically.
Sorry, what was that, Mike?
I don't know.
I thought you were asking me.
Oh no, I was asking you if you wanted to start a new podcast together.
Hilarious. Yeah, well, maybe, who knows. Dave, what's success to you this season for the Arsenal? What does it look like for you?
Oh, same as it looks every year. I want to win a trophy. I'm not one of these people who's obsessing about which one it is. If I could choose, I'd probably take top 4 in the FA Cup rather than top 4 in the Europa League. I love the FA Cup with an intensity that's probably not matched with any other tournament. So yeah, that would be a day or two out at Wembley and an easier top 4 and be there or thereabouts to the end of the season. I don't think it's inconceivable. There's a lot of football to be played, and Liverpool, despite everyone, they are an aging side. They've got a couple of new signings, but a lot of their key players are aging. Henderson's a key player. Fabinho's not going to be playing every week. Alcantara's an injury-prone older player. They are 1 or 2 injuries away. Robinson, again, they're 1 or 2 injuries away from not being a threat. So who knows? Who knows? Anything can happen. But I think I'm very confident that they will be pushing for top 3, top 2 this season. And I think that's what I'd like to see us win a cup.
And so Liverpool and City are in transition, aren't they, too? So
they haven't played with a striker for 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. So let's see. It doesn't, in the Community Shield from my side, the highlights, it looked like it wasn't working. So it's not working yet. So if they get a slow
figure it out, though. I mean,
of course they will. Of course they will.
Slow start, maybe, but that's about the best that we can hope for. So, Dave, we're gonna ask you for your top 4 for the 3 you think are going to get relegated, and then if you have kind of an off the wall prediction that you think might come true that people wouldn't normally expect.
Oh,
football related.
Yeah. Well,
Mike and Self start a new podcast, and it
was even worse than this. I was listening, obviously, to the end of Smudge, and when you were asking him about Kieran Tierney and Zinchenko, I mean, he said he had a whisper a lot. I tell you what, also, Man City didn't rate the press. Man City were very keen on signing Kieran Tierney before he signed his last new contract. So the fact that he said, I heard a whisper, Arteta doesn't rate him, I don't buy that. But I think what will happen is what happened with Man City when they had 2, they had Clichy and Kolarov. If you look at for 3 years, they literally shared the games. Mm-hmm. Yeah, every week they could play with a different left back, and it was one was slightly more defensive, one was slightly more attacking, depending on what position they would play that. And I think that's what's going to happen with Arsenal this season, because I think we're going to play different formations for different teams. I think we're going to switch to a back 3, during games quite often, and put Nketiah up top. So there's lots of things we're going to do this season that are different. And I think Tierney, Alan was right on that one. The cutbacks, lofted balls into the box, yes, it was a waste. But the cutbacks, Tierney's your man. Get into the byline and cut him back. And Zinchenko's not that sort of player. So I think we'll see them both playing a lot of football. So that's what our prediction is. They'll play, 35 games each, across the piece, with substitute appearances. As far as top 4, I think Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal. I think Chelsea will be there or thereabouts. I'm not convinced by the Spurs signings. I am convinced by their manager, but I'm not convinced by their signings. So I'm not as excited as Spurs fans seem to be for their chances. And we're due to finish above them, obviously. So that'll be the bottom 3: Bournemouth definitely, Leeds definitely, and Fulham. They're my 3, I would say.
Okay, perfect.
I think Leeds are in trouble with the signings they've made and the players they've lost.
Any surprising footballing kind of outcome this season, or at any point this season that you would kind of?
I just think it's the most unusual season, as we've just been talking about, with the World Cup in the middle of it. I just think anything could happen. So I think the interesting one from an Arsenal perspective is to see how it pans out between Ben White and William Saliba in the first few months of the season, because everyone's getting very excited about William Saliba, and I can see that. But Arteta didn't spend £50 million on Ben White for no reason. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money, for Arsenal. So he suddenly, everyone says, suddenly he's going to be the third choice centre back. I don't buy into that. So I think again, we'll see a lot more rotation than we've seen at Arsenal or we've been able to see at Arsenal for many years. We have the squad to rotate. I think everyone's got their favourite 11, but people always I've said this to you, Sophie, people get hung up by that. The Invincible 11 started 2 games out of 38. The team that everyone says is the Invincible started 2 games. And the first one was in April. So it's a squad game. It's a squad game.
So the wild prediction is more rotation.
Well, it's not very wacky, but you did put me on the spot, Mike.
No, I'm putting that in there. So let's do the prize draw. Perry is due any moment now. I got an email from him at about half an hour ago. That was because that's how we get in touch with Perry.
He just said in the text to me, so I'm the warm-up for the warm-up.
But he's not because he sent me an email that was just blank, and I never know whether that was like meant to convey like a problem.
Technology and Perry Groves. It's like,
yeah, it's just the email is sent from my iPhone. So
maybe that's his proof of life.
Yeah, well, it's important that we do that. But all right, so let's do a prize draw. This is the final, I think, 15th and final Ruth Beck art print, and we're going with a big one. We're going with an A3, baby, an A3 print. To those of you who that means something, it is Arsenal. It's the box office. It's the armory. It's the cannon. It's a common scene that you will see. Kind of looks like maybe she painted this from the Little Wonder Cafe, perhaps. But we're gonna give this away, and I just looked at the private chat, and that's a weird conversation you have going on there. But all right, so let's share the screen here and make sure to give this away to a deserving, generous donor. Let me see. Share screen. Okay. The winner of the final Ruth Beck art print of the day is the one and only, and I'm going on a limb and saying it's the one and only, David Lieberman. Now, can David win this? He's won a prize, but if it wasn't a print, in fact, it was a non-personalized, it was a kit, so he can win the print. So David Lieberman, you have won a large Ruth Beck art prize, and congratulations. It's been a very successful couple of hours for you. So David, thank you for your donation. This is a guy who Gooners versus Cancer has been very good too, and he's been good to Gooners versus Cancer. He's got that 71 double winning book that's signed by a lot of the 71 double winning team, and now a shirt and a print. And we have with us today Perry Groves, who is following, not preceding, Dave Seager.
Hello, chaps. How are we?
Hello.
Lovely to see you, Perry, again. How you been?
So, good. So Dave said that I was going before him, so I was the warm-up. Then he went, no, it's Alan Smith. So I'm the warm-up for the warm-up.
Oh, no, I just shared your text.
You're the you're the person who's created a Dave Seager sandwich. But Dave, you and Perry, I obviously have a relationship. How did that get started?
Oh.
I don't mean.
Can you rephrase that?
Know each other.
First time was interviewing Perry for the Geordie Armstrong book. So many years ago now. But
what a man he was, by the way.
Yeah.
What a man.
We touched on that. We touched on that earlier, Perry. Yeah.
Yeah. Not just probably one of the most unsung Gooners, I'd say. When you mentioned obviously the 70-71 double winning side. I believe he didn't get an England cap from what I can remember.
He didn't.
So again, one of the most underrated, not only like Arsenal players, but England players as well. And just an unbelievably nice man. When he came, he was my.
I think your quote, Perry, it was the two nicest people I've ever met in football. Sadly, are both no longer with us. Geordie Armstrong and David Rocastle.
And Rocky Rug, and both right wingers. So all three of us in sort of the right wing club. And Geordie was just same as Rocky, just very, very humble, very, very humble man. Would talk to you and impart his knowledge on you when he was our reserve team manager, and he understood the psyche of first team players coming to play in the reserves. And I didn't want to let myself down even playing in reserves. Some players' attitudes ain't great, when they go big time Charlies when they're in the reses. So I didn't want the young players down, because when I was a kid and big time Charlies come in the reserves, they used to get on my nerves because they didn't try. And then that, as a young player, that made my job harder, because obviously if you've got 3 or 4 players that ain't trying, then you can't sort of impose yourself. But I didn't want to let him down as well, because he was such a gentleman, So I had a good relationship with Geordie, very good.
And again, we talk about kind of the straws that draw together the generations. If you aren't familiar with Geordie Armstrong, but you are on Twitter, Jill Armstrong, and she's out there passing the gospel of Geordie Armstrong on to people who, like myself, never got to see him play, but he's a constant on my timeline because of what Jill does, and it's just,
she's amazing.
In whatever field I'm considered, whether it's eating or insurance or whatever it ends up being, I hope that my daughter, when I'm gone, is posting pictures of me every day or nice, words or something like that. I could only imagine. It's a lot. You got to be pretty pleased with your dad in order to be like Jill, and that's a testament to both of them, I think.
Mike, what would you say you was better at, insurance or eating?
I've actually eaten insurance policies before.
Because they weren't any good.
Yeah. They're like,
destroyed the evidence.
I think it's pretty clear what I'm better at, Perry.
There's always a get out clause in his insurance company. I didn't realise that eating it was one of them.
Yeah,
I'm really sorry, Dad. We don't cover that.
That voids the contract, and then you void the contract.
You always read the fine print.
Do you know what you were saying there, though, Mike? Back to I don't do Twitter because I think it's there's too much hate and bile on there, and I haven't got enough time, to read it. And but one of the good things about it is keeping players like Geordie Armstrong in people's consciousness, and that's what you have to do. Because my generation, Dave's generation, we'll remember Geordie. Then our sort of knowledge of Geordie, you can pass it down. But you can meet a wider audience through your Twitter, through all the different sort of media platforms. And that's what we have to do. And you mentioned Rocky Rocastle, Dave, there as well, whereby, say, our generation, we got to make sure that the next generations never ever forget about players like Geordie Armstrong, Rocky Rocastle. You know what I mean? So that by osmosis all filters down to the generations. Because believe it or not, football did exist before 1992. I mean, a lot of people, think, oh no, it's the Premier League, but there were some pretty decent players around before that, that time.
I was saying, Perry, also, I've got to go. It's not I'm eating on your time, but Geordie was that person who knew the club inside out, so would pass that on to new signings and new players, particularly even players arriving from abroad by that stage as well. And we were very fortunate, I think, that we've got, Arteta and Edu and players within the structure that know Arsenal and can do that now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, you have to get it. You have to get, again, obviously we're all biased because we're massive Gooners, so we're going to be, I'm quite right, we should be biased. But Arsenal isn't just a football club, it's an institution. And I can remember signing for the Gooners, September the 4th, 1986. And George Graham, before he... yeah, exactly, you're not wrong. It was like that. Who's that ginger clampet coming from Colts United? with his horse and cart. What's all that? It wasn't exactly like a stellar signing, was it, to be fair? But I can remember when George had told me what he was going to give me, and I actually took it because there was no negotiations. You know what I mean? I'm coming from Colchester.
You didn't call Lee Dixon and ask him for more.
No chance. No, absolutely no, because he just told me to. The second word would have been off. Do you know what I mean? It'd been, yeah, right. Yeah, you ain't got that good, Ginger. So, but as I walked out the door, he actually said, I'd say one thing and one thing only. I'll say this once. I went, all right, what's that then? He went, remember who you are, what you are, and who you represent. And that was it. It didn't stop us getting in trouble. Don't get me wrong, because obviously we got caught quite a lot. But you was aware when you was wearing your blazer, when you got awarded your Arsenal blazer, which we all had to wear on the away team games, and any official duties. That was like getting your the Masters green jacket. And when you got that Arsenal blazer, you put that on, you thought, wow, this is pretty special. I'm a part of an exclusive club here. So it's still. And when we used to walk for airport, or everybody went, you remember that Virgin Atlantic advert where all the stewards and stewardesses walk through the airports, don't they? All in and everybody looks around and goes, "Oh, that was like us." Yeah, and it made you feel like you was somebody. You know, it made you feel like you're going to work, but it was pretty special. So that was pretty cool.
Super Kev says that all the time. You know, you leaving, Dave?
I need to go, I'm afraid. Yeah.
Dave,
Been emotional,
so
Dave.
much.
I'll see you. Marlon, who I mentioned from the book, is coming over. Perry's doing a tour, but I'm going to see you then.
Okay, cool.
September, yeah? I'll catch you near the time.
Absolutely.
Cheers, everyone. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate everything.
Thank you.
Don't forget to get Dave's book, everyone.
Yeah, Dave's book, Arsenal for Everyone.